to this very important bill, the Energy Amendment Bill 2023 by Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna. Mr. Speaker, I think this bill is long overdue. I have worked in the energy sector previously, before I joined politics. I used to work for the then Electricity Regulatory Board, which now transformed to the Energy Regulatory Commission, and now which is called IPRA. And this problem has been there. The issue of cost of power in this country. The cost of power, one of the factors that contribute to high cost of power in this country is this very expensive, secretive, and satanic energy purchase agreement between the Kenya government and some independent power producers. This bill, Mr. Speaker, will help us unlock the problem that has existed in this country for many years. For many years. So this bill will ensure that the so-called independent power producers who engage in this purchase agreement are known. So Senator Sifuna is seeking to resolve the problem of disclosure. We must know who these companies are, what are the faces behind these companies, what are the interests, what are the agreements say. It is not right that a government institution, Mr. Speaker, can enter into agreements with the individuals or private institutions without the knowledge of the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, maybe this problem really highlights the main problem we have in this country. The main problem of disclosure of material facts in agreements of this nature. And I want to say that maybe we need to amend this to ensure that all these agreements are subjected to parliamentary approval. So I want to encourage Senator Sifuna to maybe look at the amendments and improve them further, to require that these agreements, because they affect our economy in a large way, must be looked at by Parliament so that the public interest is protected. Mr. Speaker, as I said, the amendment is going to give us disclosure of ownership information. Who are the owners of these entities, and how much are they drawing from the people of Kenya for their personal interest, and what is the cost at which they are selling electricity to our public institution, particularly KenGen. So I think it is very timely, and I want to encourage members, particularly on the aspect of disclosure, to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, without disclosure, then, as it has been stated in the memorandum of the bill, then we are not sure what this money is doing. Whether this money is being used for money laundering, whether this money is part of tax evasion schemes or corruption. So disclosure will help us deal with all the social issues around the non-disclosure of these agreements. Mr. Speaker, I don't know why it is so difficult for the government to provide information on some of these things. We struggled with SGR, up to now, we do not have clear information on some of the contracts of SGR. Mr. Speaker, we are now struggling with we have struggled with these independent power producers, and even now, the biggest debate in this country is about Adani matter, which I can see the chairman of Roads and Transport is smiling. He has done a good job, and he's also my member of CPIC, to try and deal with the problem. Mr. Speaker, I think it's high time that we demand that all such major agreements, particularly between government and private investors or individuals, must be disclosed to Parliament and must be processed in this House, Mr. Speaker, because they affect our people, and we exist in this Parliament because we represent the people under Article 1 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other important issue which I want to agree with the mover of this bill is the matter of ensuring that these agreements are aligned or comply to the principles of public finance management under Article 201 of the Constitution, on matters of openness, on matters of accountability, on matters of public participation, on matters of generally good governance in managing public resources, prudent management and responsible management of public resources, on matters of sustainability, whether the agreement is sustainable or not. So we want a situation whereby such agreements, the value for money must be assessed. And therefore, the proposal to ensure that the Public Finance Management Act is complied with, I think is a laudable proposal in terms of ensuring, for example, public participation. Public participation aligns to what I've said earlier, the involvement of Parliament in this process, the involvement of stakeholders in the energy sector in this process is very key. So I want to thank the mover for also including that. The other aspect, Mr. Speaker, is compliance to the best practices in procurement, particularly aligning this process to the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act that we already have. How do we identify these IPPs? Do we just wake up and say so-and-so will be an IPP and he becomes an IPP? Or there must be a competitive process, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, these are the same questions we are asking on the airport deal also. Is it, do you just wake up and say so-and-so, bring a proposal, or you open the tender to competition so that you have as many people bringing proposal on how they can manage some of these utilities? Mr. Speaker, I think this is a very commendable amendment which I support. Mr. Speaker, the other very important requirement is a requirement that that these companies or these so-called IPPs, the agreements are made public on their website, in their annual audit reports, so that Kenyans can look at it and make their concerns known, so that the value for money can be assessed and that Kenyans can now get a good deal from it. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have to state very clearly that the energy purchase agreement is a rip-off. This country, the people of this country have been ripped off for years, Mr. Speaker. And some of the people who own these IPPs, Mr. Speaker, we are told, are either former government officials, or people who worked for these entities, Mr. Speaker, these public utilities, like Kenya Power, KenGen. Mr. Speaker, even as we discuss this bill, we need also to find a way of how we can deal with those who have stolen from us through expensive power purchase agreement. As we support this bill, Mr. Speaker, we should also look for the thieves. I call them the thieves, Mr. Speaker, because this is a stealing, who have stolen from us for years, Mr. Speaker. They must be brought to book. We must know the faces behind it, and they must account for all the money they have stolen from Kenyans through these satanic and expensive agreements which they have signed with the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, also the provision to ensure that Section 5 of the Access to Information Act is an important amendment. And access to information, Mr. Speaker, is a constitutional right in this country. But this right is not, it has been curtailed, Mr. Speaker, in many of these public offices. And this is a piece of information that should be easily be available. I was surprised that even the committee had difficulties accessing these contracts, Mr. Speaker. It should not be a problem, Mr. Speaker, to assess a contract between investors and the Kenyan public through some of these public utilities. So these amendments, Mr. Speaker, will make it easy for the public to access some of this critical information and be able to process it, ensure that it is aligned to the interests of the people, it is aligned to good practices, and it has value for money. So these amendments, Mr. Speaker, are going to ensure that the long-standing problem of expensive power purchase agreement between the Kenyan government through its key utilities, energy utilities, and the independent power producers is handled. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, even as we pass this bill, I want to encourage the committee not to tire, to continue investigating this matter so that we get to know who are these dark forces behind the IPPs. Why is it impossible to bring to book these people? Are they living on this earth or they are living elsewhere, Mr. Speaker? If there are people who are living on this earth and are in this country, why is it so difficult to get them? Mr. Speaker, if you start calculating how much this country has lost through these IPPs, some of them were started during President Moi's time, to date, many years back, Mr. Speaker, you probably find that this is the money we need to build another airport, and we don't need to bring Adani here. We can get money from these criminals, Mr. Speaker, to build an airport and to build other utilities. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend Senator Sifuna for this very, very important amendment and a very bold amendment. I know the owners of IPPs will be out to fight these amendments, but I want to ask Senate to stand firm. Mr. Speaker, this House has, in the recent days, been seen in the eyes of the people as a house that is serving Kenyans. This last week, what the Committee of Roads and Transport did really gave Kenyans another fresh sense that we have an institution that is working for us. Now, this one is the second one, Mr. Speaker, and I want to encourage our committees to deal with issues that are impactful to the people of Kenya, so that this Senate is seen to be working for the people of Kenya. And one of the things, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to digress a bit, is that we know we are going to have DORA coming back to us, where there is a recommendation that we should reduce shareable revenue, Mr. Speaker, from 400 billion to 380 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, I think this is the day that Senate needs to rise up and say no. We cannot be told that every time we have a drop in the national revenue, it is the Senate, it is the devolution that suffers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to stand firm and protect our counties and demonstrate that Senate does not exist because of politics alone. We exist to support our counties and to protect our counties. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to support this bill and encourage the other members who are going to contribute to also support this bill so that we can unlock one of the major problems we have been having in the energy sector, that is expensive power purchase agreements which lead to high cost of power, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you, Senator Osotsi. Senator Samson Cherage.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I rise to support this Energy Amendment Bill 2023. And